Hi, this is Karen White of Divine Time Astrology, and today I have Neeshee.Pandit from Atma Astrology with me, and we're continuing our series on the signs. Today we're talking about the sign of Cancer. The sign of Cancer begins on June 22nd and ends on July 23rd this year, and every year it's about the same time. Sometimes it's maybe the 21st or the 20th and maybe even the 23rd, but it's always around those three days, 20, 21, 22, maybe even 23. But it changes a little bit, but most of the time it's around that time. Okay, so the sign of Cancer. Thank you for being here with me again today, Neeshee, and talking with me about the signs.
Sure, my pleasure.
Yeah, so the sign of Cancer, it is a movable sign and it begins the summer season. In fact, it's the summer solstice is usually the same day that Cancer starts. Okay, so the first day of summer is actually the 21st. So it must depend on where in the world you are.
Right.
When that actually begins. So, and I always go by Greenwich in the United Kingdom because that's where everything begins for the time zones. So anyway, it begins the first day of summer and all the movable signs begin a season. And Cancer begins the summer. Do you want to say anything about that?
About the relationship between Cancer and summer?
Yeah, in terms of Ayurveda.
Well, summer is a time when, Pitta is accumulating. It's a fiery time. Basically, from late spring until fall, Pitta is on the rise. There's a lot of possibility for Vata to get imbalanced during this time. It tends to be a drier season because of all the heat, which imbalances Vata. But basically, we're looking at a buildup of fiery energies from spring, basically from spring through summer. Summer represents the peak of that.
Okay. And then, so when we get to Leo is when we really see the full expression of that.
Yeah.
Though it's interesting when it starts off with Cancer, which is a
right.
water sign. And it has to do with what Cancer, part of the body that Cancer rules, which is the breast or the chest area, because that's where we experience emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And it also is the heart, which is the seat of our feeling and emotions. And it also contains the lungs. And it's also where we have the first reaction to an emotion. So when we feel something, that's where we feel it, typically. And it's also where we react to emotions. Mm-hmm. So is there I just find that interesting. How does that fit into Ayurveda?
Well, the heart is the emotional core, of the being. And so heart stress, emotional stress, all those things register, with that physical organ, with this area of the body. Afflictions and Cancer will also show those things.
Okay. When you have clients who come to you this time of year, do you tend to see certain types of imbalances, like doshic imbalances in the body?
Definitely, definitely during the summertime. During the springtime, people are more kapha. They have a lot more phlegm and mucus, and they're clogged up, and because kapha is aggravated. In the summertime, people tend to be more vata aggravated.
More vata aggravated.
Yeah. Pitta is accumulating, but Pitta is not aggravated yet, you see? So all the doshas have a cycle. There's a certain season when they all get aggravated. And it's usually in the fall that Pitta gets aggravated. But it accumulates in the summer. But it's not the dosha that's bothering people usually. It's Vata that's bothering people.
Oh, so how does water come into that? Kapha.
I don't know that it does.
Oh, really? Okay, so there's not always a direct correlation.
No, I mean, water relates more to spring, and that fluid flowing element. of water. Water is flowing in the springtime, you could say.
Okay. Well, those are the parts of the body that Cancer rules. So now we'll move on to the fact that it is a movable sign.
Mm-hmm.
So Cancer is a movable sign, and that means he begins a season, just like the other movable signs of Aries, Libra, and Capricorn. They also begin seasons. And movable signs create change. They're action-centered, and they create movement. So they're creative and pioneering for that reason. Now, Cancer in particular brings about change as the result of new feelings. What would you like to say about that? What is your...
Well, I think that's really key what you're touching upon, because Cancer has this paradox of being a movable sign and also being a water sign. And there's no other water sign that's movable, And so that's really interesting. It's like, what's going on with that? You wouldn't think of a moon-ruled sign as being like initiatory and pioneering, right? So that's why the way that you said it is really important, because Cancer is those things, but through a receptive process.
Yeah, it's receptive to its feelings, and so new feelings can cause them to change their whole life.
Exactly.
Right.
It's through the receptivity to new ideas, to insights, to their intuition, to their perception of things, to what flows into them that they're able to create, That's really important, because in our society, we have a society that values like doing things as the means for accomplishment. Like, you're not exerting yourself, if you're not active, you're not going to accomplish anything. But the message of Cancer and lunar things altogether is that there's a different way to participate in life, and that is simply by being open to what's going to flow into you, and when it flows into you, then you bring it into manifestation. So Cancer epitomizes that quality.
Yeah, I like the way you put that. That leads us right into the male-female aspects of the signs, and Cancer is a female sign, which means it's receptive,
right,
and it reacts, and what they do is dependent upon how they feel.
Right.
So it and it has, in Cancer in particular, it has to do with a positive self-image. So the more positive your self-image is, the more you're going to be able to do good based on how you feel. So like the difference between men and women, just to be real general about it, is that men do good to feel good, but women need to feel good to do good.
Right.
And this is a good example of that.
That's the difference between the sun and the moon, and the feminine and the masculine.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Cancer is a feminine sign,
Yeah, and it's interesting too, of course, the logic of astrology and the logic of nature. There are two feminine signs that begin a season and two masculine signs that begin a season. And they're opposite each other.
Right.
Of course. So Aries, is the spring, and Libra, the opposite sign, is the autumn. And then Cancer begins the summer, and Capricorn, the other feminine sign, opposite Cancer, begins the winter. Just very logical. Do you want to say anything about that? Is there any correlations to anything in Ayurveda? Or am I trying too hard to make them directly correlate?
It might be too, nothing comes up for me in the moment. They're very much, but I don't have an insight on it in this moment.
Okay, that's fine. This is not a test. So because Cancer is a gentle sign, feminine sign, it's automatically considered to be gentle. And so it's more about being relaxed, enjoying, and it's more important than getting things done. So again, like you were saying, there's different ways of being in the world. And
it's
then
about allowing yourself to just kind of flow into the world,
Yeah.
Rather than grabbing the world by the horns and saying, this is what I'm going to do. It's more like, how can I just sort of flow into this,
Yeah, exactly. And let me see. So when there are combinations of planets, of so-called cruel planets in masculine signs,
Mm-hmm.
it usually indicates that pain and misery can result in an aggressive personality that is directed outward at people.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the gentle signs usually indicate, if they're like our difficult planets in those signs, it usually indicates pain and or sadness that turns inward on itself
Mm-hmm.
instead. And so that's one of the ways that a sign can be gentle, and that is where it keeps the bad to itself and gives whatever good it has to give.
It's internalized. It
Internalized.
internalizes the struggle, whereas the cruel externalizes the struggle, expresses the struggle.
Yeah, and because the female signs are also more about being and enjoying than they are about doing. Cancer in particular really enjoys witnessing the progress of others. It's
And
because it's more by them.
think about mothers in general. It's like mothers go through so much pain in childbirth, but they don't really say too much about it afterwards. It's like now they're focused on nourishing the child. It's like that's
Yeah.
the huge thing. It's like the child is feeding. It's like they have this newborn. It's like everything's just about that. So the struggles, the incredible physical ordeal, before birth, during birth, after birth, it's like pretty tremendous.
True.
But the woman is focused on the child. So it's like that ability to internalize the struggle and still be a source of nourishment. That's like really how Cancer works.
Yeah. So it would only be Cancer planets in the sign of Cancer that were not in good dignity there that would perhaps create the cliche mother, the one
Right.
that says, well, I was in labor with you for 48 hours and
Right.
it was so hard, and basically tries to make you feel guilty for being born,
That's right.
that kind of thing.
That's right.
So
Affliction of Cancer.
right. Okay, so the element of Cancer is water.
Right.
And water is, well, it's not talking, okay, correlates to Kapha. I'm
Right.
actually talking about the Kapha, Pitta, Vata right now, not the element as much. So the water is Kapha, and it provides Cancer with the ability to feel.
Right.
So you want to say anything else about the element of water or the
Sure.
element of Kapha, which is not pure water, is it?
Kapha is water and earth.
Water and earth, which is
Cancer
feminine.
is
Yeah.
right. Cancer is more of the watery side of Kapha, which is emotional, which is gentle, which is sensitive, which is devotional, nurturing, calm, internalized, introverted. Water element is about, as you said, the capacity for feeling and emotion. But water is also, that which connects things, that which is a medium to carry things. People often use the expression, water is life, or the waters of life. The yogis describe the subtle energy systems, in the human body as like rivers, you
Hmm.
know. So
Oh.
water is life. So water element is about sharing life, nourishment of life, being able to nourish life. So feeling and nourishment, is water
Right.
element. That's what Kapha is about. Kapha is the stable individual, who's a source of nourishment through their own accumulation of that nourishment.
Hmm. Hmm.
They're watery people. They're round and just calm, and they have a lot to give. They've stored up a lot of that kind of energy.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Mother.
Yeah.
Mother gets large when she's giving birth. The weight gain, the water that accumulates, in order to nurse a child. It's all these things are related.
And then nursing too.
Nursing,
Right? The type of water.
flow of liquid, So
fascinating. It also makes me think too, again, about the difference between males and females and the feminine and the masculine, I should say. And there's that the masculine feels better about itself through accomplishment, whereas the feminine feels better about itself from the inside out. So, like basically spiritual practices, and taking time to rest and relax and be and enjoy and feel. It's so interesting, isn't it? How it all ties in together.